The Winnipeg Blue Bombers are a Canadian football team based in Winnipeg, Manitoba. They are currently members of the West Division of the Canadian Football League. They play their home games at Investors Group Field after many years of playing at the since demolished Canad Inns Stadium. Currently, the former Canad Inns Stadium site is an abandoned Target store, and is being converted into Plaza at Polo Park. The Blue Bombers were founded in 1930 as the Winnipeg Football Club, which remains the organization's legal name today. Since that time, they have won the league's Grey Cup championship 10 times, most recently in 1990. With 10 wins, they have the third highest win total in the Grey Cup among active and defunct CFL teams. Though they are currently the team with the longest Grey Cup drought, no other CFL franchise has as many Grey Cup appearances as the Blue Bombers' current 25. The Blue Bombers were also the first team not located in Ontario or Quebec to win a championship. Team facts: founded, 1930, helmet design, gold background, with a white W, and blue trim, uniform colors, blue, gold and white, stadium, Osborne Stadium, Canad Inns Stadium, Investors Group Field. Local radio, CJOB 68, first place regular season finishes, 23 Euro 1933, 1934, 1935, 1936, 1939, 1940, 1941, 1947, 1950, 1952, 1958, 1959, 1960, 1961, 1962, 1972, 1987, 1990, 1992, 1993, 1994, 2001, 2011, Eastern Division Championships, 7 Euro 1988, 1990, 1992, 1993, 2001, 2007, 2011, Western Division Championships, 13 Euro 1936, 1939, 1941, 1947, 1950, 1952, 1958, 1959, 1960, 1961, 1962, 1972, Grey Cup Finals appearances, 24 Euro 1935, 1937, 1938, 1939, 1941, 1945, 1946, 1947, 1950, 1953, 1957, 1958, 1959, 1961, 1962, 1965, 1984, 1988, 1990, 1992, 1993, 2001, 2007, 2011, Grey Cup wins, 10 Euro 1935, 1939, 1941, 1958, 1959, 1961, 1962, 1984, 1988, 1990, Division History, Western Football Conference, West Division, East Division, North Division. West Division, East Division, West Division, East Division, West Division, main rivals, Saskatchewan Roughriders, Hamilton Tiger Cats, a team they have played on numerous occasions for the Grey Cup, Toronto Argonauts, BC Lions, fans chant BC sucks. Throughout the entire game when the Blue Bombers play the Lions and other Prairie City teams, the Edmonton Eskimos and the Calgary Stampers, 2014 regular season record, 7 wins, 11 losses, 0 ties. Team history. Beginning. The first football team in Winnipeg was formed in 1879, and was called the Winnipeg Rugby Football Club. On June 10, 1930, they amalgamated with all the other teams in the Manitoba Rugby Football Union to create the Winnipeg's Rugby Football Club, adopting the colours green and white. The Winnipegs played their first game against St. John's Rugby Club on June 13, 1930, when St. John's won by a score of 7-3. In 1932, the Winnipegs and St. John's merged into one team and adopted the colours blue and gold. 1935 Grey Cup. Western teams had been to the Grey Cup game 10 times since 1909, but they had always gone home empty-handed. It was clear in those days that the East was much more powerful, outscoring their opponents 236-29 in these games. On December 7, 1935, the Bombers got their first shot at winning the 23rd Grey Cup. The game was being held in Hamilton, with the hometown Tigers being their opponents. It was a rainy day at Hamilton Amateur Athletic Association grounds, with 6,405 fans in attendance. Winnipeg was up 5-0 before many fans had even reached their seats. Hamilton player Jack Craig let the opening kickoff bounce to the turf while a Winnipeg player promptly recovered the ball at the Hamilton 15-yard line. Winnipeg scored quickly on a Bob Fritz pass to Bud Marquardt to get the early lead. After scoring another touchdown on a Greg Cabot catch in the end zone, Winnipeg went into half-time up 12-4. Their lead was soon cut to 3 points in the second half after Hamilton scored a touchdown of their own, helped by a blocked kick that placed the ball on the Winnipeg 15-yard line. Then, after a Hamilton rouge, Winnipeg's RBKR Fritz Hansen caught the kickoff, and after a few moves and a few missed tackles, was on his way to a touchdown, making the score 18-10. Hamilton would force a safety to bring themselves within 6 points, but failed to crack the end zone, getting as far as the Winnipeg 4-yard line. The final score was Winnipeg 18, Hamilton 12. With that, Winnipeg had become the first team from Western Canada to win a Grey Cup. Blue Bombers in 1935, before an exhibition game against North Dakota State, Winnipeg Tribune sports writer Vince Lear decided to borrow from Grantland Rice, who labeled Joe Louis as the Brown Bomber. He called the team the Blue Bombers of Western football. Up to that point, the team had been called the Winnipegs. From that day forward, the team has been known as the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. In that same year, the Blue Bombers, Calgary Broncs, and Regina Rough Riders formed the Western Interprovincial Football Union as the highest level of play in Western Canada. Early days of glory. From 1936 to 1949, the Bombers won the right to compete for the Grey Cup in 1937, 1938, 1939, 1941, 1942, 1943, and 1945. Of these appearances, Winnipeg won only twice, in 1939 over the Ottawa Rough Riders and again in their 1941 rematch. Jack Jacobs era. Jack Jacobs, known as Indian Jack, was a Cree quarterback from Oklahoma. He came to the Bombers in 1950 after a successful career in the United States. He led the Bombers to 2 Grey Cup appearances, losing both. His exciting style of play and extreme talent increased ticket sales and overall awareness and popularity of the club. The revenue the Bombers were getting from their newfound popularity was enough to convince them to move from the small, outdated Osborne Stadium to the new Winnipeg Stadium. Jacobs was so well liked, the fans even referred to the new stadium as the house that Jack built. Jacobs retired in 1954 to become a talent scout for the team. In 1951, Jack Jacobs became the first professional football quarterback to throw for over 3,000 yards in a season with 3,248. That year, he was also the first professional football quarterback to throw for at least 30 touchdowns, with 33. The next year he bested that mark with 34. Glory years and Bud Grant saga. Bud Grant joined the team in 1953 after a 2-year stint with the Philadelphia Eagles, as one of numerous NFL players lured to Canada during the first part of the decade for then better salaries. After a 4-year career as a receiver, then at the time called an offensive end, he accepted the position of head coach of the Bombers in 1957. Grant went on to coach the team for the next 10 years before becoming the head coach of the NFL's Minnesota Vikings. In 1956, Blue Bombers fans named Labatt's Pilsner Lager, which had a blue label, Labatt Blue, in honor of their team. During Grant's tenure as head coach, the Bombers welcomed the likes of Ken Plon, Leo Lewis, Ernie Pitts, and Ed Koto-Weech to the team. The Bombers competed in 6 Grey Cup games during Grant's tenure, winning 4. In 1961, the Bombers won 21-14 over the Hamilton Tiger Cats in the first Grey Cup game to go into overtime. the Bombers and Tickets met again in the 1962 Grey Cup, with the game being postponed with 9:29 left in the fourth quarter due to zero visibility in the famous Fog Bowl. The game resumed the next morning with the Bombers winning 28-27. During the second half of the 1960s, the Bombers' domination gave way to lean years, with 4 seasons of double digits in the loss column. The team bounced back in the early 1970s with the likes of quarterback Don Jonas, running back Mac Heron, wide receivers Jim Thorpe, and Bob La Rose. The team finished first in the Western Conference in 1972, the first time it had done so since 1962. However, the Bombers came up short in the Western Final against the Saskatchewan Rough Riders. In the game, the Bombers squandered a 13-point, third-quarter lead en route to a heartbreaking 27-24 loss, with Saskatchewan kicker Jack Abenden converting a short field goal attempt on the last play of the game to send the Riders to the 1972 Grey Cup against Hamilton. The 1972 season also marks the last time the team has finished first in the West. The team struggled for a few more seasons under coaches Jim Spavital and Bud Riley before Ray George was brought in as head coach before the 1978 season. Under George, the Bombers became one of the stronger teams in the West, but usually behind George's former team, the powerhouse Edmonton Eskimos coached by Hugh Campbell. In 1981, wide receiver Eugene Goodloe became the first CFL player to reach the century mark in receptions in a season. Goodloe caught 100 passes for 1,494 yards and 14 touchdowns. That season, the Bombers became one of the first teams to have 3 receivers with at least 1,000 yards in a season, Goodloe with 1,494, Joe Poplawski with 1,271, and Rick House with 1,102. Cal Murphy era equals. In 1983, Cal Murphy was hired to be the new head coach of the Blue Bombers. Almost immediately, Murphy set the tone for his career with the Bombers by trading popular QB Dieter Brock to Hamilton in exchange for QB Tom Clements. Trading Brock turned out to be a wise decision, with Clements leading the Bombers to crashing victory in the 1984 Grey Cup, coincidentally over the Brock-led Tiger Cats. This was Winnipeg's first Grey Cup in 22 years, and also their most recent appearance in the championship game as the Western representative. Murphy was named Coach of the Year in both 1983 and 1984. In 1987, Murphy stepped down as head coach to become the team general manager, with assistant coach Mike Riley taking over head coaching duties. Then, just prior to the start of the 1987 season, the Montreal Alouettes folded. With the East Division suddenly down to 3 teams compared to 5 in the West, the league moved the Blue Bombers to the East to balance the divisions. Under Riley, the Blue Bombers quickly made an impact in the East, winning Grey Cups over their former division rivals BC and Edmonton in 1988 and 1990 respectively and garnering Riley the Coach of the Year award both championship seasons. After Riley left, Darryl Rogers and Urban Bowman each led the team for a season until 1993, when Murphy took over head coaching duties again. Murphy went on to lead the team to a total of 5 Grey Cup appearances, winning, as a coach in 1984, and as a Gram, in 1988 and 1990. He left the club after the 1996 season, having spent 14 years with the team. Later, he would coach the Saskatchewan Rough Riders in 1999. Winnipeg would play a total of 8 consecutive seasons in the East before moving to the newly created North Division in 1995 during the CFL's expansion to the United States. With the end of the CFL's American experiment a year later, and the re-establishment of the Alouettes, the Blue Bombers would return to the reconstituted West Division. This arrangement would also last only 1 season, as Winnipeg returned to the East again for the 1997 season after the Ottawa Rough Riders ceased operations. In bold years. In November 1996, Cal Murphy left the Blue Bombers organization after 14 years. This was partly due to a 68-7 playoff thumping by the Edmonton Eskimos, and partly because the team had not had a winning record the previous 2 years, winning only 7 games in 1995, and 9 in 1996. Jeffrey Bold was hired to replace Murphy as the team coach, and despite a huge amount of hype and championship promises going into the 1997 season, he proved to be one of the least successful head coaches in team history. The Bombers won 4 games in 1997, and just 3 in 1998. The few notable highlights from that era include, Milt Stkell became an All-Star in 1997, his first full year with the team, and scored what seemed like at least one long touchdown in every game. A 43-12 drubbing of the eventual Western Division champion Saskatchewan Rough Riders in the 1997 Labor Day Classic, in a dramatic win over the Rough Riders at home in 1998, forgotten backup QB Troy Copp led the second half over 20-point comeback. This was the guaranteed win day that the club had been promoting all week, as well as the first win of the season, in Week 11. The few memorable players on the team during that time included linebacker K.D. Williams, safety Tom Europe, running back returner Eric Blunt, and Milt Stkell. Milt Stkell era Milt Stkell joined the Bombers in 1995 after a 3-year career returning kicks and seeing spot duty at receiver with the Cincinnati Bengals. He played in the Bombers' final 6 games of the 1995 season, racking up 469 receiving yards. In 1997, Stkell set a new league record that still stands today for average gain per reception with 26.5 yards on 61 catches for 16 yards, including 14 touchdowns. Following a brief return to the NFL, that saw him on the verge of making the Green Bay Packers if not for a serious knee injury at the end of training camp, Stkell remained the team's primary receiver. In 1999, the Bombers acquired Khari Jones from the BC Lions. Together, Stkell and Jones brought the Bombers back to prominence, with Jones being the CFL's most outstanding player in 2001, and Stkell getting the honor in 2002. During the 2006 Grey Cup, Khari Jones and Milt Stkell were voted and honored as the best QBWR combo in CFL history. Charles Roberts joined them in 2001, a year which the Bombers went to the Grey Cup, which they eventually lost to the Calgary Stampeders. The following season, Winnipeg returned to the West Division following the establishment of the Ottawa Renegades. The team was a powerhouse during this period, being one of the best teams in the league from 2001 until 2003. Midway through the 2004 season, Jones was traded to the Calgary Stampeders, with backup QB Kevin Glenn taking over the starting duties. Glenn led the team to 2 mediocre seasons after the trade. Prior to the 2006 season, the Renegades suspended operations and Winnipeg once again returned to the East Division. With the offensive core of Stkell and Roberts still intact, Glenn led the Bombers back to respectability in 2006. The season included many highlights, but none as exciting at what is simply known as the play. On July 20, 2006, trailing the Edmonton Eskimos on the road 22-19, and facing 3rd and long on their own 10-yard line with 4 seconds left in the game, Milt Stkell caught a 100-yard TD pass from Kevin Glenn as time expired to win the game 25-22. It is considered by many as the greatest play in CFL history. Aided by the miracle catch, the Bombers ended up making their first playoff appearance in 2 years. Despite losing in the first round, optimism going into the 2007 was higher than ever. The 2007 CFL season was in some ways the year of Milt Stkell. He broke the career CFL touchdown record and fell just short of overtaking the career receiving yards record held by Alan Pitts. The 2007 season would likely be Stkell's last, as he was 37 years old and had been contemplating retirement for the previous 2 seasons. The 2007 Grey Cup game was played between the Winnipeg Blue Bombers and the Saskatchewan Rough Riders, the first time the 2 Prairie teams met for the championship. Winnipeg was defeated by the Saskatchewan Rough Riders 23-19 in the Rogers Centre in Toronto. During the East Division final win over the Toronto Argonauts, quarterback Kevin Glenn broke his arm and Winnipeg was left with an inexperienced rookie to take his place for the championship game. Backup quarterback Ryan Dinwiddie in his first CFL start did not fare well and threw 1 touchdown pass, fumbled once and threw 3 interceptions to Saskatchewan cornerback James Johnson. Johnson was later declared the game MVP. One of the picks was shown in the instant replay to have hit the ground before it was caught. Despite his rookie mistakes, Dinwiddie showed promise going into the 2008 season. He was released prior to the 2009 season. It was announced on January 31, 2008 that Miltstgill would be returning for one more year for the 2008 season. He signed a one-year contract for $200,000 on the basis of the fact his wife wanted to have their next child in Winnipeg, and the fact that they were in line to be a contender for the Grey Cup. He took a $50,000 pay cut, and started the season 159 yards away from breaking Alan Pitt's all-time receiving yards record. Other returning players who were free agents going into the 2008 season, including star DE Tom Canada, OL's Dan Goodspeed, and Matt Sheridan, signed for less money from the Bombers than other teams were prepared to pay them, in hopes of a Grey Cup run in 2008. Tom Canada, in particular, reportedly turned down a much higher contract offer from the Montreal Alouettes, to come back to Winnipeg. The Bombers made a surprise trade when they sent All-Star running back Charles Roberts to BC for Joe Smith on September 2, 2008. Then on September 8, 2008, they traded All-Star DE Tom Canada to Hamilton for Zach Marino. But on September 9, 2008, the trade was cancelled because Canada was injured and could not play for at least 10 weeks. So, since they could not trade Canada, they sent over Corey Mace and a first-round pick for Marino. Following the 2008 season in which the Bombers were defeated in the division semi-finals, Doug Berry was fired. Mike Kelly was chosen to replace him. At the end of the Cal Murphy era, Mike Kelly was the offensive coordinator and was passed over for the top job in favor of Jeff Reinbold. With Miltstgill's early season knee surgery and drop in production, it was once again speculated that Miltstgill would retire. The departure of Brendan Taman on January 13, 2009, was another sign that this era was coming to an end and a new one was beginning. On February 18, 2009, Miltstgill did retire from the CFL, which formally ended the Miltstgill era. The revolving door era the return of Mike Kelly opened a new Cal Murphy era, and the board hoped to bring back Murphy's success. However, Kelly was fired by the Winnipeg Blue Bombers Board of Directors on December 17, 2009, after 1 year of employment. Paul LaPolice was introduced as the 28th head coach in Blue Bombers history on February 5, 2010. The new coach emphasized the idea of team, and playing for the uniform. He also made it a point to talk about fixing problems rather than making excuses. The new paradigm was tested in the 2010 season, in which the team finished for a Euro 14 and missed the playoffs for the second straight year. 9 of those games were lost by 4 points or fewer, while 10 were lost by a touchdown or less. The 2011 season featured an almost completely unchanged team. The Blue Bombers reversed their standings from last place in the East in 2010 to finishing in first place in the East Division with a 10-8 record. The team's success hinged on a league-leading defense dubbed Swaggerville, which led them to their first division title in 10 years. The team advanced to the 99th Grey Cup after defeating Hamilton in the Eastern Final. However, they lost to the favoured BC Lions by a score of 34-23. On August 9, 2013, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers announced that CEO Garth Butchko stepped down and general manager Joe Mack was fired. The CFL returned to Ottawa in 2014 with the establishment of the Red Blacks. Initially, the league planned to keep Winnipeg in the East, at least for the short term, due in part to the ongoing competitive dominance of the West. Despite this, Blue Bombers management lobbied heavily to return to the West Division immediately, and eventually the league relented. The Blue Bombers finished last place in their first season back in the West, with a 7-11 record. O'Shea a new top brass era after being named the acting CEO in August 2013. Wade Miller was announced as the CEO and president of the club on November 12, 2013. The shake-up of the top brass in 2013 also led to Carl Walters having to take over the acting GM duties, which were made officially his on November 26, 2013 when he was named the general manager. On December 4, 2013, Mike O'Shea was hired by the Winnipeg Blue Bombers to become the team's 30th head coach in team history. Current personnel equals football operation staff equals roster equals management equals head coaches equals general managers equals stadium. During the Blue Bombers' early years, the team played at Osborne Stadium, a small stadium near the Manitoba Legislative Buildings. The fast, passing-dominated play of Bombers quarterback Jack Jacobs dramatically increased attendance at games and precipitated the need for a new, larger stadium. Winnipeg Stadium was built in the west end of the city near Polo Park, and the Blue Bombers began play there in 1953. The stadium had significant changes over the years, including a renaming to Canad Inns Stadium. Over the years, various plans were proposed to relocate the stadium. In 2008, a plan was proposed to build a new stadium at the University of Manitoba, with both private and public funding. On April 2, 2009, David Asper inked a deal with all levels of governments to build a new 33,422-seat stadium at the University of Manitoba in southwest Winnipeg. This would serve as the home for the Blue Bombers, as well as the U of M Bisons. The deal included refurbishing the existing Bison Stadium for practice and training, as well as upgrading, expanding, and building new sports and fitness facilities. This project, once completed, would be the premier sports training facility in Canada. The project would have received ongoing funding from a retail development that Asper planned to build on the former Canad Inns Stadium site. As part of the deal, Creaswin Properties would take over ownership of the team in 2010. The new stadium and facilities would have been completed for the 2012 CFL season, with the retail development finished in 2013. On December 13, 2013, it was reported that Asper and Creaswin Properties would no longer be included in the stadium project, which would continue with funding from the City of Winnipeg, Province of Manitoba, and Winnipeg Blue Bombers. On May 2, 2012, the Blue Bombers announced that because of construction's delays, the stadium would not be ready until September, thus forcing the team to play 4 or 5 home games at Canad Inns Stadium to start the season. In June 2012, it was announced that the stadium would not open until the 2013 season. The Blue Bombers played their first home game at Investors Group Field on June 27, 2013. Losing 38-33 to the Montreal Alouettes. Players of note. See also, List of fan-owned sports teams, Canadian Football Hall of Fame, Canadian football, comparison of Canadian and American football, List of Canadian Football League seasons. References. Bibliography, Bob Irving. Blue and Gold, 75 Years of Blue Bomber Glory, 2005. ISBN 1-894283-59-7, Official Statistics of the WIFU, CFC and CFL, 1950-2007, CFL Facts, Figures and Records 1985-2007, Winnipeg Blue Bomber Media Guides 2006 and 2007. External links, official website, CJOB Radio live broadcasts of all Blue Bomber games, morningBigBlue.com unofficial Winnipeg Blue Bomber fan community, ourbombers.com unofficial Winnipeg Blue Bomber fan site, Blue Bombers history and timeline.